Hello and welcome back to Sharing Stories with Sharon. Well, today I've decided to change it up a little bit and go for a story with a slightly darker tone. I hope you enjoy it. It's a folk tale from Poland and it's called Misery. In a land far away, there once lived a rich man in a fine mansion and a poor man who dwelt in a hovel nearby. The rich man lived well, but his neighbour's life was hard and wretched, for misery lived in his house. Misery sat in the chimney corner. He made the poor man's fire smoke and burn so low that his house was never warm. Misery sat at the poor man's table and breathed upon his food, so that what little meat he had was tough and tasteless. Worst of all, misery slept in the poor man's bed between him and his wife, so that they turned their backs upon one another and shivered under the thin blankets. Then, one spring morning, the wife looked out at the earth newly waking and the flowers coming into bloom, and she thought, our life would not be so very bad if only misery did not live with us. So she spoke kindly to her husband and asked him if they could find some way to drive misery out. Her husband was touched by her words, and he sat and thought. Then he went into his woodshed and picked up a wide plank of wood. He called to his wife, and together they set out into the wild wood. After they had walked some way, the man looked back and saw misery following them. They reached a deep stream, and the husband put down the plank for his wife to walk across. Quickly he followed her, pulling up the plank before misery could reach it. But when he glanced back again, he saw that misery had moved a huge tree trunk so that he could cross the stream and was still following behind. The poor man knew of an old hollow tree deep in the wood. When he reached it, he put down the plank, cut a branch from the tree, and began to shape some wooden wedges. Misery came closer to see what he was doing. I can't stand living with misery any longer, the man said loudly to his wife. I am going to shut myself up in this hollow tree where he can never get at me again. You must drive in the wedges, wife. Hold the plank fast and keep him out. I will do it, husband, said the wife, for she saw that her husband was setting a trap. Misery could not bear to see the poor man escape him. So at the last moment he sprang into the hollow tree, just as the man was climbing in. At once the man jumped out again, and with his wife's help put the plank in place and drove the wedges home. When it was done, the poor man and his wife looked at one another and laughed for the first time in many years. With misery gone, the couple walked home hand in hand, and it seemed that already their luck was changing, for they found a purse with some gold coins lying in the road. Soon the poor man's house was a very different place. The fire burned brightly, the food tasted good, and with misery gone from their bed, the poor man and his wife kept one another warm and slept well all night. The vegetables in their garden flourished, and they had enough to sell at the market. The hens laid more eggs, and soon they made enough money to buy a pig. The wife sang as she swept the house clean. With misery gone, life was worth living at last. But the man was still afraid that misery might escape from the hollow tree and come back to plague them. So each week he went to the tree to make sure that the wedges were still tight, and if any seemed loose, he would hammer them in again. Now, the rich man had noticed how his poor neighbour prospered. He has found some treasure, he thought, and he goes into the wood each week to take a little more gold from his store. So the next time the poor man went into the wood, the rich man followed him. Watching from the bushes, he saw the poor man hammering away at the wedges. Ah, thought the rich man, so that is where he keeps his treasure. Although he was wealthy, he was always greedy for more gold. He waited until the poor man had gone and quickly knocked out the wedges to see what was hidden in the hollow tree. And at once, misery leapt out. He was so pleased to be free that he followed the rich man home, and from that day lived in his house instead. For riches are no guard against misery. It takes love and kindness and sometimes a little cunning to keep misery at bay. The end. So remember, be on the alert, be careful. You don't want to accidentally let misery into your house. Till next time.